But speaking about Italy, as I mentioned, Nations League. So bounce back after the Finalissima embarrassing loss. They got four more. They will have played four Nations League games. They played one already against Germany. They play Hungary tomorrow. 1-1 against Germany in Bologna. It's clear that Mancini is using this as an opportunity for youth to come up and play. And obviously, Germany didn't really have the same idea. They had a lot of their starters playing. Big names. If you're a German soccer fan, you got your best. You're watching it. You got your best players out there, and the German fans probably didn't know half the players that Italy fielded. But regardless, 1-1. It's fine. At the end of the day, like you always want to win. Personally, I want to see them top the group, go on to the Nations League semifinals, win the tournament, hopefully. But what did you make of the game?
I mean, if we're talking strictly about, just comparing it directly to the Finalissima that was on just a few days ago, there was a noticeable change in the way they approached the match. Obviously, they went with 10 different starters plus Donnarumma compared to the Finalissima. And there were certain things that I really liked. I really liked the center back pairing. I think that Acerbi and Bastoni were a lot more dynamic than Bonucci and Chiellini. Bonucci and Chiellini have been stalwarts for the past 10 years or so now, if not more. And one thing that
is a good point. Yeah.
And one thing, I think soccer at the highest level in Europe is changing. It's not what it was 10 years ago. We look at the top center backs from the game today, and we look at guys like Koulibaly, we look at guys like Tomori, we look at guys like Bremer, just to give a few examples from Serie A. Central defenders are a lot more physical. Not only do they need to be, good in the air, good tactically with their positioning, but they also need to be a lot more physical. They need to be quicker. Modern football, the way we're seeing it with Pep Guardiola, with a lot of the top coaches, with Jurgen Klopp, is a very, very aggressive press where you're having, as many as 5 to 6 players in that 1/3 of the opposing team's defensive zone where they're pressing extremely highly, and that's going to leave certain gaps between your midfield and your defense, and it takes players that are very quick, very reactive to be able to get in and pretty much stop any progression if ever the press fails. And people like defensemen like Bonucci, center backs like Bonucci, center backs like Chiellini are much more from an older breed. Chiellini is definitely one of the more physical guys, but if we're looking specifically at Bonucci, I'm going to pick on him a little bit. He's someone who's a lot calmer on the ball, but isn't overly aggressive, doesn't come into challenges, and isn't generally as quick as some of the top defensemen, top center backs in Serie A. Like if we're looking at in terms of pressuring and tackling, advanced statistics are going to show you that Bonucci is in the 3rd percentile for pressuring, 5th percentile for tackling. You compare that to someone like Bastoni, who's in the 85th percentile for pressuring, 59% percentile for tackling. It's just a different breed of center back, and I think that's what we need to see for Italy moving forward. And I think that really contributed to us performing a lot better against Germany. Now, understandably, Germany is they have a completely different play style than Argentina. Argentina is going to attack at you, and they're going to come at you down the middle, as we saw with Messi. And when you have someone like Bonucci, who's in the 3rd percentile with pressuring, and he's not really going to challenge Messi. We saw Messi on multiple occasions just attack down the middle. We saw Di Maria definitely expose him. We saw on was it Lautaro's goal? No, I believe it was
Yeah.
Lautaro's goal, where he was completely unmarked, and there was just no pressure, there was no marking, and Di Lorenzo completely got beaten down Italy's right flank. And again, Di Lorenzo, if we're looking at the same thing, we're looking at the 43rd percentile for pressuring, 62nd percentile for tackling. It's not what you need in the modern game. Yes, you want to have center backs that are able to play the ball out of your zone and that are able to play almost as a regista. But the game's also evolved in the last 5 years, especially beyond that, where you with especially with Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool and Pep Guardiola's Man City, that high pressing means that you need to have very fast and very reactive center backs, and I don't think Bonucci is that. He might have been the prototype center back 10 or 15 years ago, but that's just not the case anymore. And I think with Bastoni and even Acerbi to a certain degree, I don't think he was too bad against Germany. But I think Bastoni and Mancini, that's what I'd like to see moving forward, because they're, in terms of statistics, they're a lot better at doing the things that center backs need to do in the modern game.
And Joseph Jordan, you bring up really good points, because looking at it, Germany had 67% possession of the ball, so they just really dominated us. And if you're not playing with the ball, you're gonna have to be very reactive to get it. So fairly strong points. If I may add also about the game, I found it interesting that a guy like Pellegrini got to play left wing, a little bit out of position. I've never actually seen him play left wing before, so I can be corrected on that. But he had a good game. He had a great showing. Obviously, both teams didn't bring their 100% best lineup. Mancini decided to go with a more youthful lineup. But yeah, it was an experiment that worked out. I like it. But Jordan, I actually wanted to throw in, because we had this discussion last week prior to the game, and you brought up a very good point that I really want you to bring up. The 4-3-3 was the formation we were talking back and forth that maybe might not be the best thing for Italy going forward. You brought up a really good point on what your ideal formation would be. Please enlighten Adriano and Nick, because I totally agree with it.
Again, it all depends on who's available, especially at the national team level. 4-3-3 works, but like we saw with Milan this past season, the 4-2-3-1, which, to be perfectly honest, is just a modified 4-3-3 with your wide forwards playing more of a midfield role and actually sitting a little bit lower. The reason why I like a 4-2-3-1 is that, again, in the modern game, like I said, that very, very high press, that high octane press where you're just almost sitting in your opponent's defensive zone and just taking away any space that they have to build out of the back. It's kind of what Italy should at least try and accomplish. And you have guys like Verratti and Jorginho. If you're looking at they're in the mid to high, mid 80s to mid 90s as far as the percentiles for pressure, interceptions, tackling, that kind of stuff. And then you also have guys like Tonali and Barella that can also pretty much do that as well. And it requires people that are very fit. It requires people that can go a full 90 minutes and do that. And now with the advent of having 5 substitutions, there's no reason why you shouldn't try and take advantage of that. And by having more people in the midfield, you can kind of afford to really park yourself and kind of choke out any type of building from the back from any team. Italy has a lot of really good midfielders, and with Insigne now going to Toronto FC, and a lot of other attacking options not really panning out as much, I think we should kind of play to our strengths, and our strengths are in the midfield. We have, outside of Tonali, Barella, Verratti, Jorginho, you have guys like Locatelli, and you have Pessina, you have, the list just goes on. You have Biraghi, who I think played a pretty decent match against Germany. Pack your midfield, take advantage of the assets that we have, and a lot of those assets, a lot of our stronger players are in the midfield positions. So, instead of debating, okay, well, who are we going to put up front? And we've tried at this point every permutation of Scamacca, Berardi, Insigne, Immobile, and the list just goes on and on and on. And, we won the Euro, but even during the Euro, we just couldn't find that winning combination. And it's been incredibly difficult to find that combination since then. So I think adapting and playing to our strengths are what we need to do. I just don't know that Roberto Mancini is willing to adapt, and I think that's the reason why we're not playing in the World Cup and why we got hammered against Argentina, is because there's, Mancini might be a little too stubborn, a little too set in his ways, and if Italy's going to come out of this, they need to break the mold, and they need to try and find something that works for them. And unless they start, using all these assets that they have in midfield, I don't know that that's going to happen.
No, it's good points. And listen, we spoke about it last week, Jordan. We even off air, we were sticking around chatting about this because there's so much to dissect with, obviously formations, who's available, who can fit where. Listen, I'm not against that formation. Obviously, the 4-2-3-1. I'm used to it, watching Milan week in, week out for sure. And there's guys that play in those positions, throughout the year. So, you bring up a guy like Tonali, he plays that double pivot role, right? So, he slots in perfectly for me. But you know what? I don't know. I think what we've seen with Mancini, obviously, we saw it against Germany, again, sticking with the 4-3-3, which personally, as much as we wanted that to change, it was still I still expected it to stay that way. What we wanted last week, and we were harping very much, was obviously improvements, going in the right direction, change. We saw a small glimpse of that. Listen, I don't want to say it's a complete 180 because it's far from that, but we did see it. Obviously, like you said, Jordan, the 10 different starters, 6 players making their international debut with Italy as well. So it's small things like that are good. We're seeing the improvement. Where I think Mancini is not going to change, and again, we can have this conversation until forever, is the formation. I don't see it changing right now. Maybe in the future we can hope and pray, but I don't know. Like I still think it's going to stick to the 4-3-3. It's just who's going to be in the positions, on the pitch. Johnny brought up a good point with Pellegrini. I kind of wanted just to touch upon him a bit before we break down other things. I think he had a fantastic match. Obviously, wearing the number 10, it's a big number to wear. We saw all the pictures afterwards. The Tottis back in the day, the Rossi's wearing the number 10, the Roman boys wearing the number 10, and honoring that number, making it proud to wear it. And I think, listen, Pellegrini was probably one of the few bright spots, obviously, against Germany. And again, it was no easy task, guys. Like, we make it seem like, Italy this and that, but you know what? They were leading. They were stupid to concede, 3 minutes after. But listen, they were there. They were knocking, and it was good to see, a little bit of a breath of fresh air, going into this game. Any standout players for you? Because I like certain players, obviously. Like I said, Pellegrini. I like Scamacca. Like I'm a Scamacca fan, so I liked what he brought up front. Any standouts for you besides the defense that you mentioned? Going forward.
I mean, obviously, Bastoni notwithstanding, because I was impressed, and I mean for me to single out an Inter player and say, I think this is the future of our back line.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I think that's what we really need to, focus on moving forward. One of the players that I really liked, I think that, I mean, like Jenny said, Lorenzo Pellegrino. I think Politano wasn't too bad either.
Yeah.
I like Florenzi on the right. I would have loved to see Calabria, or I'd like to see Calabria at some point kind of regularly break the starting lineup. Fratesi had a pretty good chance at one point. He just kind of shot it with his wrong foot, but he kind of attacked the space, and that's what you need to do, and that's what you want to see these young players do. They're coming in and they're getting these opportunities, and you want to see them take their chances. You want to see them not be scared and play too conservatively. So I'm happy that a lot of these players, Fratesi, for example, were able to at least try and showcase a bit of their talent. Are they at the level where they're going to be regulars in the national team? Probably not right away, but it's something that down the line, it's by having experience, and especially against top sides like Germany, that these players are going to be able to evolve and mature as players down the line.
Yeah, and one player that I feel like as if is like a very diamond in the rough was Davide Fratesi. Like obviously, not the best ball control and not not the most fluid player, but what, got good looks, was aggressive, won those 50-50s when he had to. Wasn't afraid to attack with it. I actually like that a lot. It gave some spark and some creativity, and I feel like as if the game of soccer, as you mentioned before, is evolving towards a movement of speed. That's why Italy was so dominant early on in the Euros, because he had Spinazzola enabling Insigne on the left, and on the right, Di Lorenzo. He's not obviously he's not at not as much in form as Calabria is, but still really good, but fast too, very offensive, and he had Chiesa on his right side as well. So. To give more speed is honestly always a plus. Scamacca was decent. I like the looks that he got, but still needs to be improved. But I feel like as if the one striking youngster I feel like probably deserves a big shout out was Raspadori, because in the Finalissimo, out of this past couple of games because now that we actually had a couple of games under our belt here, so far out of these young generation of forwards, I feel like as if Raspadori was the one that impressed me the most, because not only was he a bit more dynamic up front, he also tracked back to try to win that ball. And I always had a soft spot for those type of forwards that always comes back to try to, at least help out the mid, at least to try to win the ball back, get the flow going. I feel like as if that's usually the type of forwards you want on your team.
Yeah, well, even a guy like Chiesa, right? I mean, I think that really hurt our chances of qualifying for the World Cup. Just the fact that he was injured, and again, same thing in the Finalissima, and moving forward into the Nations League. Having someone like Chiesa, who's so good at attacking open space when he has the ball at his feet, but at the same time, like, he tracks back like a few other people in the game actually can track back, and just the fact that he's just so good in that wide role, and it shows that Italy's missing someone like Chiesa right now, because at the end of the day, he was the difference maker at the Euro last year, and if we're not in the World Cup, I think that's a huge reason why we're not there.